це роблю так. І мені треба, так, посада Влада. Good evening from our headquarters in Kyiv. This is the Sunday show at Dramatsky International, the only prime-time TV program explaining Eastern European geopolitical storm in English, and I'm Natalia Humenyuk. It's quite a day to follow what's going on in the region. So we're starting in this program with the political crisis in Moldova, and we will speak about unlikely alliance between pro-Russian and pro-European parties, which gathered together to keep out of power Democratic Party run by the tycoon Plahotniuk. Also, we go to the Ukrainian politics, since the major Ukrainian parties, like Servant of the People, like The Voice, run by the rock singer Vakarchuk, as well the former President Poroshenko, and way more, announce who will run at their party list during the snap elections. So we will discuss, is it the real chance of the reset of the Ukrainian parliament with a lot of really new faces? As well, this week, the HBO series Chernobyl had been shown, and everybody discussed them, not just in Ukraine. So we decided to talk about the series with the historian Serhii Plokhii, who is the author of probably the best book about the Chernobyl tragedy, and discuss a bit what's going on with the characters and the protagonist of the movie. As well, we've had our own exclusive report about the engineer who pressed the last button at the fourth block in Chernobyl at the last day of the tragedy. So that's what we should expect during the program, but we're starting with Moldova, as we know that Moldovan court forced out the president Ihor Dodon. It's had deepened a standoff between the rival forces. We also know that interim president who was just introduced, had called snap elections. So what's happening in Moldova? A day before, President Dodon, Russian-backed Socialist Party, had created an alliance with the AKUM pro-European party, and that was quite unlikely, and currently there is a political crisis, and we are calling to Chisinau, to probably one of the best experts in the country. This is Vladislav Kulminski. He's the executive director of the Institute for Strategic Initiatives. So Vlad, explain us what's going on in Moldova. We know that there is a political crisis, that there are so kind of two governments, two presidents, at the same time some kind of protest, and very unexpected unity between a pro-Russian and pro-European party. What it's all about? What does it mean?
Look, to be just very brief, a couple of days ago, Moldova created a legitimate parliament, 3 months after the parliamentary elections, which took place on February 24. The parliament started working, and then it elected a government between a very unlikely alliance between a pro-European party and a pro-Russian party. And the current government, which is led by the Democratic Party and its leader, formal and informal leader, Vladislav Kulminski, they refused to accept the results of that parliamentary meeting where the parliament was elected and where the government was created. They refused to accept these results, and they pretty much tried to keep power by force. They encircled all government buildings. They said that what happened in the parliament was a coup d'etat, that it was not legitimate. And then the Constitutional Court, which is one of the key tools of the Democratic Party to control the captured state, the Constitutional Court issued several rulings that, the election of Maia Sandu as the Moldovan prime minister, the creation of the cabinet is illegal. It also removed from office President Dodon and appointed current Prime Minister Pavel Filip, who then dissolved the parliament and scheduled early elections for September 6th. So as you can imagine, All of this was, of course, completely unconstitutional because Constitutional Court cannot be the highest, the supreme authority in the country, the supreme executive authority in the country, and legislative authority in the country, and judiciary authority in the country. It is quite simply a tool that is used by the Democratic Party to keep in office. So today they encircled all government buildings and refused to accept the results. The newly created government doesn't really have any option to backtrack. They will need to go all for it. And today, what people are waiting for is recognition of the new government from the European Union, the United States of America, Ukraine, and other countries,
Russia,
which will pretty much send a very strong signal to the Democratic Party that it's useless to try to oppose it, that it has happened, you need to accept it, and from now on, you become opposition.
Vlad, explain still how this unexpected alliance between pro-Russian and pro-European forces had become possible. Were there really the Russian involvement also in that, besides the other allies or partners of Moldova? And what is special about the Democratic Party and its leader Plokhii for Moldova? How come he is and the party is able to do that?
Look, let's start with the last question. Democratic Party and its leader Vlad Plokhii. So they pretty much were part of different alliances in the Republic of Moldova. But starting from 2016, they control every government institutions in the Republic of Moldova. They run the country through force, corruption, and bribery. It's a very corrupt, very illegitimate government which people do not trust. And the majority, the ruling majority, which they created in 2016, was created again through bribery by buying MPs from other parties. For example, 14 members of parliament from the Communist Party joined the Democratic Party. So this has been a highly dubious rule in the Republic of Moldova. So pretty much you can say that the legitimacy of the Democratic Party has always been extremely low. But at the same time, they governed in a way that basically turned Moldova into a gray zone between Russia and the West, where you had smuggling, where you had control over government-owned enterprises, which served as a source of illegal rent and revenue, where you had stifling of political opponents, and the use of the security services, the Ministry for Internal Affairs, in order to control the situation, and in order to run the state and keep in power. So the Democratic Party many times changed the rule of the game in order to stay in power, such as, for example, a year ago against heavy domestic opposition and against, the heavy opposition from the international community. They changed the electoral system in the Republic of Moldova because under the previous system, they would have lost the election. So they changed it to a new system which enabled them to keep control and to score a decent result in the Moldovan election. So they pretty much ruled by force, by bribery, through corruption, and all the other means. So not being willing to accept this kind of government has basically driven pro-Russian and pro-European parties towards each other. They forgot about their geopolitical differences for the time being. They basically said that if we continue like this, geopolitics is not going to matter. It's not going to matter anymore whether we are with Russia or the European Union, because the country is simply going under. The country is collapsing. It doesn't have functional institutions. It is run in the interest of a few people who extract the rent and illegal resources. So we need to do something about that. We need to really clean up the country first before we even start to decide whether it goes east or west. So this government, of course, is completely situational. It's temporary. It's not going to last. But it faces a very important task of cleaning up government services, of extracting or forcing Mr. Plokhii's loyalists from the key positions in the government. And he populated the entire government with his people whom he pays and whom he controls. So the whole idea would be to just squeeze them all out from office, and then after this, go for early elections. So that, I think, is going to be the plan for the immediate future. So today, the key things that Moldova society is waiting for is recognition of Maia Sandu's government from the international community, and if that is not going to suffice, if Plokhii and the Democratic Party continue to oppose continue not to recognize the power in Moldova has changed, then of course it's going to be street protests. And I think this time around, nobody's going to make a step back, because what the regime is doing is completely legitimate and it flies in the face of logic, legislation, constitution, and moral.
Still explain us, the Democratic Party kind of encourage their supporters to come into the center of Chisinau. We've seen that on the pictures. Is there any concern about any kind of clashes, that there would be different people from different political forces, and what the law enforcement in doing in this situation? So give us a feeling what's going on in the country in regarding of in the streets and with the people.
Look, I mean, today very few people turned up, and most of those people were brought to Chisinau from the countryside and from the local level, but very few people actually turned up. I think we can only talk about 2,000 or 3,000 people. So today's so-called demonstration in support of the Democratic Party, which claims there has been a coup d'etat, which refuses to recognize the legitimacy of the new government, that demonstration failed. So they failed to show any strength. In fact, what they showed is that really nobody supports them in the Republic of Moldova, and that it's time to go. The Ministry for Internal Affairs, yes, I mean, they are still loyal to the government, but I mean, that's a very hierarchical structure, and they will change their loyalty because, we've got a lot of professional people there for whom motherland, for whom duty are not just empty words, for people who are really imbued with a sense of serving the country. They're going to start changing sides, and, there's absolutely no question about it. So pretty much what we're witnessing is just the ambitions and the fear of one single man and about 10 people around him, Mr. Plokhii and his clique, who are basically afraid to lose power because they are highly likely to face persecution pretty much right away. And so to them, control over the government remains a key ingredient of their survival, both political and also, not going to jail.
Vlad, thanks a lot for your clarification, and Hromadske will definitely follow what's going on in Moldova, so follow us on our social networks, you'll know more, and it's indeed extremely important at this moment. If the snap elections in Ukraine happens, they are currently planned on the 21st of July. There is still a chance that they might not happen. Still, the parties need to provide the Central Election Commission with their party list already on June 10th. So these days, all the Ukrainian journalists, and not just them, politicians, activists, are moving from one party convention to another party convention. So we had dozens of them almost every day, and the parties are announcing their party lists. What is interesting that we really found out a lot of new people we didn't know before, who hadn't been in the political power. We would like to show you these party conventions as well. And for instance, what was most interesting, we finally got today the list of Servant of the People, the party which barely existed till more or less today. The party of Vladimir Zelensky. He had announced more or less hundreds of his people. We'll go in details about that later. We had the former President Petro Poroshenko, European Solidarity, who announced his people. We don't need to show all of them now. We will go into that a bit later. We can also talk about President Poroshenko, who had his party. Now it's called European Solidarity. But probably the most interest was to the Servant of the People, who is a new party of the Sviatoslav Vakarchuk, and there are a lot of activists there. And in order to discuss what had happened, what's going on, is really the chance of reset of this parliament. We have the great guest in the panel. We have Olena Sotnyk, who is Ukrainian MP from the European Integration Committee and happened to join the party of Ihor Smeshko, Strength and Honor, as the second position in the party list. Ihor Smeshko has now, according to the recent poll of the rating group, 4.8%. We also have with us Vita Dumanska, who is a coordinator at election watchdog campaign Chesno. So, Olena, first of all, we'll go in the program into the party list, into the all the discussion, but you're an optimist. How come you're coming in this party? Who is Ihor Smeshko? I guess he pretty much unknown internationally. He used to be the servant of the security service. He got quite a good, result in the presidential elections. Why? Why not servant of the people? Why not voice? Why him?
Okay. First of all, this political party is also very pro-European, and the main external ideas, it's of course Euro integration, Euro-Atlantic integration, and to fight with aggressor Russian Federation. So for me, it is definitely the same what I feel is important for Ukraine for the future 10, 15 years, which is like our main goal to become European country, strong country in alliance of other countries, NATO.
To follow up, for instance, we show the party list of Ihor Smeshko. Most of the people are not so much known for the foreigners, but for instance, you have the Rifat Chubarov, who is leader of Ukraine Crimean Tatar National Movement. Some other political leaders of the Crimean Tatar movement are in different parties. You have the, what we now like, current MP Ivan Miroshnichenko, Volodymyr Zamana, who is the Chief General Staff of the Ukraine Armed Forces. What would you say? Is this party a bit different, that there are some of the people are new, but some are not? How do you feel in this company?
The main idea was to have and to select professionals. Like our main focus that Smeshko, he is a possible and I would say one of the most interesting candidates for the prime minister, because he both has some experience, a lot of experience in security. He has a lot of experience in foreign affairs. He used to be ambassador in Switzerland, and he has experience in areas of first of all external and internal relations. So it means that he can mix this idea of professionalism and of course of wisdom and of experience. And the idea was that we will have the list of people who will be ready to join government and to work from the first day, because each of them, they have their program as the possible ministers. They have their initiatives for the challenges of Ukraine. That was the idea, because nowadays you can hear a lot of, I would say even a little bit populistic statements like, we need new faces. I agree that we need new faces compared to the old elites, but also we need professionals. And the idea was to have this combination of people who used to be who used to be professionals in this parliament with good reputation, who proved their reputation with very practical results, for example, draft laws or fighting with some challenges. And the idea was also to invite people who used to be in some way in executive power or other spheres, which have really experience to meet the challenges which Ukraine has now.
Vita, in a rare interview prior to the elections, Vladimir Zelensky said that he was asked, like, what would be the coalition, and he said, with whom you would work, and he said, like, we won't work with the current parties, there would be new parties. And then the journalist asked, like, what kind of new parties? It's just impossible. Would you work with Tymoshenko, Poroshenko? Like, no, there would be new parties. Everybody watched this interview and said, like, what the hell he's telling to us? Now we see all the new parties, all the new parties. The Narodny Front barely gets it to the parliament, the biggest previous party. Samopomich, another kind of newcomer of the previous election, also in a tough position. We don't know what's going on with the Poroshenko party. He needed to kind of remake it. How do you see generally, as an election watcher, how you describe this campaign and these elections and what's happened like right now?
You see, probably we'll definitely have totally new parliament. We have only like 2 or 3 political forces which were a bit rebranded, a bit just Samopomich added this star, like European stars. Solidarity changed his name to European Solidarity, so like slight rebranding. But I think the coalition definitely would be formed with new players, because Golos, like Voice Party, they have very strong potential to grow during that campaign. All the old parties, they have like 5, 7, 8%, so that's really, really small amount. So definitely we will have totally new parliament this summer, and I'm pretty happy with that. I'm pretty happy that political forces open their party list and to show to the watchdog initiative to NGOs and ask them to make an inspection, to check it. Because in 2014, only 2 political forces were ready to listen civil society. That was Samopomich. This party invited to check their list and say who is like bad guy, so they promised not including that in their parliamentary list. The same did Udar party. But
Klitschko party.
Klitschko party, yeah. But this year, like now, we receive a lot of calls from different parties. They are begging us, please check our list. We would like to know if there is somebody with bad reputation or some who violated the law or something else. Please tell us. We would like to filter our list. So I'm pretty happy with that.
We would speak about the concerns, but probably it's worse since you're here before to give a bit more information to our audience. We will write. You can find all the publications on our webpage in.hromadsky.ua. But for instance, I would like to show the first 10 of Volodymyr Zelensky Servant of the People list. So we have the Dmytro Razumkov, who is this party leader. And who was kind of known during the campaign. Ruslan Stefanchuk, he's a representative in the Parliament and is a professor of law. Irina Venediktova is an expert on juridical reforms as well, an expert in law. She was in our studio. David Arahami, entrepreneur. Halina Yanchenko, an anti-corruption policies activist, now an expert, also quite known for society. Mikhailo Fedorov, the head of digital in Zelensky team. You've seen our interview with him. Alexander Kornienko as well was there in election headquarters. Anastasia Krasnosilska, expert on taxation. We had a person who is the CEO of 1+1 Media Group. While ago, a famous journalist, now also a person close to Ihor Kolomoisky, because the channel is owned by the Ihor Kolomoisky, but this is the media person. And as well, Jean Belenyuk, who is a wrestler, silver medalist of the Olympic Games, a Ukrainian African as well, what's interesting to mention. And yes, we have way more people. I think like we have the 100 names. I should say we don't know most of them. You know, they're not very much known, but some of them were those who Zelensky represented in to his administration. I probably would go on with the Sviatoslav Vakarchuk Golos Voice Party. So we have the former Deputy Minister of Economic, Yulia Klimenko. We have IT entrepreneur Kira Rudik. Yaroslav Zhelezniak is an activist. Alexandra Ustinova is a member for probably one of the best anti-corruption action center running at the FIFS. The lawyer Makarov, Yaroslav Yurchitsin, who used to work for Transparency International. A famous also journalist Serhii Rakhmanin, and you can see the full list on your screen and as well in your Twitter. I probably should mention that as well. Petro Poroshenko European Solidarity list is quite interesting because he has the Andriy Parubi, a Speaker of the Ukrainian Parliament, who used to be in the Narodny Front, and Irina Gerashchenko is Vice Speaker and the third, and the Mikhailo Zabrodsky, who is a veteran of the Brigade of the Armed Forces, is going there, but as well Mustafa Dzhemilev and Akhtem Chiygoz, they are leaders of the Crimean Tatar movement, and Ivana Klimpush-Tsesnadze. The concerning list we have, which is with all the very old guys, is the list of the opposition bloc. It's quite a challenging scene. Yuri Boyko, Vadim Rabinovich, Viktor Medvedchuk, let's say the god-in-law with Putin, Natalia Korolevska, Serhii Lovechkin, these are Nestor Shufrich, Vasily Nimchenko, these are all the people from Yanukovych times. They have almost 10%. Still, how do you read this? Olena, maybe I would ask you now, not just as somebody running to the parliament. You know the people, you've been in the parliament. How you generally describe this reshuffle? Besides that, we should probably mention that the government, more or less, is running with Volodymyr Groysman. I probably would ask also to show this list, where you have Volodymyr Groysman as a party leader. The party has very low kind of rating so far, but you have Alexander Sayenko, Minister of the Cabinet Minister, Pavlo Petrenko, Minister of Justice. We have Amina Jeparova, First Deputy Minister of Information Policy, Lilia Hrinevich, Minister of Education and Science. So how you would read this reshuffle?
First of all, I would separate this these different lists on two groups. First one group is all former either officials or members of the parliament. For example, if you look to the opposition platform for life, we will see all the members of the parliament in current parliament. For example, if we are talking about Volodymyr Groysman, by the way, it is the most problematic for him because he has all members of the government which we have nowadays. It means that they are not satisfied with the policies of these ministers, more or less.
But they invested a lot in the promotion of the government and its achievement.
Maybe, but you know, it is always the feelings of the people, and I think that it is the most problematic for them to get into the parliament because people they are not satisfied. It's my feeling. Like Petro Poroshenko, of course, he also decided to show in the first 10 people which made a lot, I would say, and I don't see like in the first 10 somebody who is like really like I don't know, with a bad reputation, but they are very loyal to the president, and we will see what will be in the other. Yes, in the bottom, it would be the most interesting because. Let's be honest, that as a rule, when you are trying to show your first 10 or 20 people, you are trying to show the best one. But also it would be very difficult for them and problematic to maybe to explain to the people why they should one more time give them this mandate of trust if they are not also satisfied all this corruption, scandals and other things. If we are talking about, for example, I was talk a lot about our party, so it's mixed. Also newcomers, which have never used to be to the politics, but we have like professionals from this parliament, which shows the reputation and some results. And if we are talking about the second group, like particular new parties, particular new people, and it is not a secret that both of them, they made a statement that we are going to represent our list without any former MPs, or like not former but MPs. We are still MPs, and I think it is like. It's my opinion. It is not right approach. It means that both Vakarchuk and Zelensky, or I don't know, the leader of Zelensky, Razumkov, they really believe that there is no good people. There are no good people in this parliament, like all the same. But it's not true. We know that it's not true, and it is problematic for the from the strategic point of view. Because if we are going to reshuffle all times our parliament, we are not going to have institutional memory and really professional who was fighting for a long time in some spheres.
Vita, what's your take on all this party list? You've been screening a lot of MPs. Still, if you look generally, because there were a lot of rich guys who paid for their place in party list.
You see, I would like to add to that Olena said. So basically, I can say that newly created party, they have like more or less the same top 10. So it's like very nice picture. 2 anti-corruption activists, few experts. It's like 20% of that, 20% of that. One famous...
And a female quota. They really kept it. They promised they kept it.
But mostly all of the parties, by the way, kept the female quota, except oppositional platform. They have only one.
Samopomich probably did the best. First 5 people, and that's like Sadovay and 4 ladies. So that's okay. So first top 10, they are quite similar, like anti-corruption, few professionals, and like 1 or 2 stars. So that's basically the same picture in both parties. You ask about oligarchs, they might be in the bottom. That's one choice. The second one, they won't run directly, but their representatives do. And if you have, for example, Chesno will check background of all the candidates. Now it's a really rush time, so we are checking, we are working all the nights. But those who are new, it's really hard to find something on them. So it's really hard to tell to people. They are asking who are that people, but it's hard to find proper information.
I should also say we can confirm we have correspondents working on all conventions, and everybody said like, we are cleaning this list. No, today we are not meeting. We are still looking. We have 3,000 people to screen. Is your party going to work in coalition if you get to the parliament with Servant of the People and The Voice?
Yes.
And how do you see the coalition?
I would say, first of all, it is our main idea that we are ready to come and to take responsibility. It is the difference with many approaches of different parties. By the way, I think Golos can be, first of all, oppositional party. From the previous rhetoric, I don't know, maybe something will change, but from the previous rhetoric, they are more oppositional to the Zelensky. Our position that because of a lot of challenges, first of all, because we have like support of pro-Russian political parties, and it is much higher than we had before in 2014, and this is the main risk for this pro-Russian revanche.
Sorry, I just interrupt to explain to the people, maybe it's not obvious, that's how was the party convention of the Voice party looked like. Because I know seeing like what people are watching, why they are showing all these people. Because both, for instance, the Voice made it in the park, the Servant of the People made it in the Botanic Garden. So yeah, so just look, what we are showing, these are all the party conventions.
By the way, both of them in their strategies, media strategies, they are very similar, both in the lists and how they are trying to represent their parties. But coming back to our idea, I think we have a lot of challenges inside the Ukraine. IMF negotiations. We will have very tough challenge with tariffs and this new winter season. Also, we will have really this pro-Russian revanche. Also, we will have problems with our outside coalition. I mean, our partners in European Union, United States. They can change their positions. They can change their strategy, because you remember that we had the European Parliament elections, and who knows what will happen with sanctions? Who knows what will happen in Normansk format? So we have a lot of challenges. So our main idea is that we are ready to work in coalition from the first day, and Smeshko is the leader of the party. He is ready to be the prime minister and to support Zelensky newcomers team. I would say, of course, in our language, we will understand what does it mean, green team. It doesn't mean the color. It means that they are very new, they are not experienced, they don't know how the parliament works, they don't know how the government works. So it is a huge challenge, and we are ready to support them in this challenge.
What will you focus on? Because another concern is how the elections on the constituencies will take place. We have half of the parliament elected in this way. So since, still, I would allow myself to make a judgment. We still don't have the full list of Poroshenko. We still don't have some of the full list. However, their polls, their ratings are not that high to know that so many people would get into the list. So the people we know, it's more or less enough to understand how many. But still, it looks kind of pretty inspiring compared to the expectation we had a year ago, let's say.
Yeah.
It's quite a different parliament, which might look like. But the battle might be in the constituencies. Is it the case?
Of course. So what we can see that this majoritarian component we have, you see it, that's half of parliament. If you can filter a party list, that's easy, and party has political responsibility toward that people they are bringing to the parliament. But majoritarian guys, we see very strong competition in the constituencies, because it's not enough. Like year ago, everybody with Poroshenko brand, they supposed to win. But now situation totally changed, dramatically changed. For example, if Zelensky, they have very strong brand, like the brand, we call here, but they took the strategy to bring almost no names. So people don't know that guys. They didn't work in the constituencies. They didn't they were not an active people or activist. So it's really hard to believe in them. So you just have to trust to the brand because you don't know people. The same situation is with the Vakarchuk's party. They are bringing new people and nobody know them. So some constituencies will have like famous journalists. That's like one story. Restaurator, those who are like small business, but we see like really tough competition in Kiev, where you have like Tretiakov or other guys who are like really rich people and they are fighting for the death, you know.
Olena, my final. I would ask you about a rumor, because anytime there were elections, if you worked as a political journalist, you knew. They were saying, like, for this party, you paying this, for this party, you paying that. There were always these rumors. What are these discussions now about these elections and the way the party lists were created? Like, really, like, in...
Yeah,
what do you know?
There's always the rumors that somebody is behind the political forces or trying to buy some places in the list, especially in the first like 20s or something.
So kind of what is the mood now between the people?
The mood is that the stakes is they are so high that even like these old style parties, they are trying at least to show in the first row the people who are not involved too much to the oligarchy groups or something. So it doesn't mean that some oligarchs doesn't pay money to these political parties. I would say even more. For example, Petro Poroshenko, he is oligarch and he is the first in the list. So there is no doubt that it is oligarchic money. Or for example, if we are talking about oppositional platform, of course, also one more oligarch in the first row. But if we are talking about other parties, I would say that they are more or less seems like independent, and they're trying to show really new people, but because we don't know many of them, we don't know whom they represent in reality, and we will see it only in the parliament. And I see this as a main risk, because today we just see people with no Wikipedia, you know, story. But it is true. That's why it is the main benefit for them, because they don't have any biography. And of course, it is very like it is easy for the party to say like they are new. That's why you need to trust them. But we don't know how they will act in the parliament.
So let's see, let's follow the list. Thanks a lot for your work as well. Read all the publication about parties if you are interested who is where. It's totally new, that I can promise. And stay tuned, we're coming to a different topic, which is also largely discussed in Ukraine, because this week we had the HBO Chernobyl series over, a mini-series. They became the most successful series according to the IMDb portal rating. And of course, they are closely watched in Ukraine and post-Soviet space. We don't show you we show you real Chernobyl atomic power plant instead of the series. But what I should say that, of course, we would like in this part of the program to tell what we can tell from Ukraine. So we managed to meet one of the extremely interesting personalities, also a liquidator, Alexei Breus. It happened that he was the last person who pressed the last button on the control panel of the fourth block. If you watch the series, he was a neighbor of the main protagonist who working at the operators at the power plant. That is his story, and we later would discuss the series with historian Serhii Plokhii. So please watch that. We travel to Pripyat with Alexei Breus.
This wasn't here last time I came.
Прошу. Звичайно, за 30
The
років.
view out of the window has changed substantially in over 30 years that have passed. There were fewer trees, you could see the plant clearly. Even though it was lower than with today's confinement, it was visible. In the morning of April the 26th, when I was getting ready for my shift, I just did not look out the window. I had no idea what had happened there. I just slept in this flat on the sofa over there. I didn't hear a thing. I was a sound sleeper. I got up to go to work at 7 a.m. On April the 29th, Kulibin from the main station came in. He was wearing white clothing, the one you wear inside the reactor. It was odd to see. He said that the wind had turned toward our town of Pripyat. The level of radiation here had gotten worse. In some places, it was over 1 rungan an hour. 3 or 4 days like this and you'd get radiation sickness. Operators were also being evacuated. We had to go to the central square where a bus would be waiting for us. Just before the explosion, I started renovating my flat. Even then, it didn't look too good. The wallpaper came off because of the humidity. Plug sockets and light switches were all stolen by the marauders. I thought if I draw paintings, no one would be able to take them. Walls can't be taken off. Shame mine came off too.
Жалко, що знову змиє. Так. Трошки.
I did this one in the summer or spring. It turned out that the rainfall washed it all out. Nothing remains. I did this to beautify somehow this abomination and desolation. This can't be taken out.
І це те, що від ціля вже не винесуть.
Below me, on the ground floor, used to live Oleksiy Yanonenko, one of the 3 so-called Chernobyl divers who went underneath the reactor to drain the water. This is the flat of Leonid Toptunov, who entered the history of humanity with no exaggeration. This is the person who, during the night of April 26th, pressed the button to bring the reactor to an emergency stop, and it just didn't work. It exploded because of the design flaws. In 2011, Leonid Toptunov's mother came here. She visited the plant. Chernobyl nuclear power plant organized the visit. She asked me to accompany her. She stood here, in this flat. She left flowers for her son. That's all that remains of them. This is Sportivna Street. Approximately here was the bus stop where the workers were picked up from to go to the power plant for work. As usual, in the morning of April 26th, I came to the stop to go to work. The bus was all quiet. All the workers were silent. Then one of the workers uttered, "What's with the block?" Then I looked, and I saw the destroyed block. Around 7 a.m., I was on my way to work on this road. From here, looking out of the bus, I saw the destroyed block. The building was half destroyed. It was a shock. My hair stood on end. It was unclear why they brought us here. What else could be done now? But it turned out that for us, the operators, there was still a lot of work. I immediately got to work at the control panel of the 4th block, doing all the tasks ongoing. For me, the main task during the shift was to feed water to the reactor. Moscow officials kept ringing and demanding not to stop the flow of water to the reactor. When I returned to my workplace at the control panel, I experienced a sense of exaltation, celebration, excitement. It seemed to me that I was capable of everything, ready to do anything at any cost. The sky was the limit for me. It was called radiation euphoria. I didn't know it existed. In the evening, after 4 p.m, when I left the 4th reactor and took off my clothes, I was very surprised. The skin was brown in color, as if tanned, and my face and hands were red. We worked a full shift. My colleagues on the night shift worked till they could stand no more. The dose of radiation exposure I got that day was 120 Ber. It's a Soviet measure, biological equivalent of rad. It's not quite 120 Röntgen. According to the Soviet norms, nuclear plant worker could get a dose of no more than 5 Ber over a year. We find ourselves in the central square of Pripyat. There used to be a bus stop here where the buses also picks up personnel to take to the nuclear plant. In the night of April 29th, evacuation began from here. It was the first phase of the evacuation of operators of the Chernobyl nuclear power plant. As we were waiting on the bus for other people to arrive, we kept checking our watches to see how much time has passed. It was very late already. Someone had an electronic watch, which was quite a novelty at the time. That person was surprised to see a very strange hour, something like 72 hours and 95 minutes. In mid-May, I was told that my services were no longer needed at the plant. I was told, take a vacation, go wherever you want, we will call you when we start work on the third block. I obeyed, but I was never needed again, neither for the third block nor for the first two. The situation was entirely different there. In the first month following the Chernobyl accident, I even had to sign a document for the KGB not to disclose information about Chernobyl. There was a 3-page list. The very first point forbid talking about the real causes of the reactor accident at the Chernobyl nuclear power plant. My understanding is that I couldn't talk about the red stop button leading to the explosion. Initially, I really did not like the fact that the workers were accused of the Chernobyl explosion. I became a journalist. I completed a 2-year postgraduate program at the journalism faculty of the Kyiv University. I also began to write about this topic, among others. At first, I wrote, and no one wanted to publish me. I thought I wasn't writing well, so I would do a course, and I did. But it turned out that the problem was different. Chernobyl was a forbidden topic. Then the Soviet Union collapsed, taboos disappeared, the KGB was gone, my subscription was invalidated. So I was keen to tell everything I knew, and what I thought about the whole thing. Later, in the early 2000s, I grew an interest in painting. That's when I met artists from the Strontium 90 group. In journalism, for quite a long time, I touched on different aspects of Chernobyl, but never what I experienced myself. I never wrote about my own experience. As an artist, I have many more opportunities. Artists have no frameworks. Artists are free. Once I wrote that Chernobyl had distorted reality, ecological, financial, political, all other aspects are present. This distorted reality is unlike any other.
Watch other Hromadske stories on Chernobyl. We've been covering it following the links we are sharing now on Twitter. They are also on our webpage en.hromadske.ua. But also there is somebody you would like definitely hear. Serhii Plokhii is the author of this book, Chernobyl, the Tragedy. It was published a year ago and is based on the documents which had been opened, including the KGB documents. So Serhii Plokhii is probably the best person to know more about particular characters of the movie, those who worked in the control room, those who worked with the investigation. And I suggest to end the program with this interview, and the full version of the interview would be available on our YouTube and the Facebook and, of course, the webpage. So please look at that if you would like to know more.
It's HBO and Sky production miniseries. It's probably as close as anyone ever got to the reality of Chernobyl. So I would really want to congratulate the makers of the miniseries for doing such a wonderful job. The atmosphere of the context in which the that catastrophe, that nuclear catastrophe took place, is recreated very, very well. On the other hand, of course, this is a movie it's HBO and Sky production miniseries. It's probably as close as anyone ever got to the reality of Chernobyl. So I would really want to congratulate the makers of the miniseries for doing such a wonderful job. The atmosphere of the context in which that catastrophe, that nuclear catastrophe took place, is recreated very, very well. On the other hand, of course, this is a movie